On November 20th, 2025, the gavel struck wood in a packed Abuja courtroom, and the sound echoed across the entire nation. When the judge pronounced the sentence of life imprisonment for Nnamdi Kanu, it felt like the final chapter of a very long and painful book. For millions of his supporters, the air left the room. The legal battles, the appeals, the extraordinary rendition from Kenya, it all seemed to end in a cold, concrete reality. According to the letter of the law, the case is closed. But if you know how Nigeria works, you know that the Supreme Court is rarely the final bus stop. In the dark, quiet corridors of power, when the law says stop, politics often whispers, wait. Right now, a massive, unconfirmed rumor is shaking the political foundations of the Southeast. It involves one of Nigeria's richest and most controversial billionaires, secret meetings in the dead of night, and a staggering sum of 10 billion naira. The question on the lips of every insider is simple but explosive. Can money really buy freedom for a man sentenced to life? Today, we are not just looking at the headlines. We are peeling back the layers of a secret deal that could change the future of Nigeria. This is the story of the Arthur Eze auction. To understand why this deal is even possible, you first have to understand the unique position of the man at the center of it. Prince Arthur Eze. He isn't just a wealthy oil magnate. He is a political institution in himself. While other Igbo leaders were playing safe during the fierce election cycles or openly fighting the central government, Arthur Eze took a completely different path. He stood firmly, loudly, and financially with President Bola Tinubu. He is on record publicly calling the president God's gift to Nigeria. At the time, many people in the Southeast criticized him for that statement. They called him a traitor to the region. But in the cold calculus of politics, that loyalty bought him something far more valuable than popularity. It bought him access. Arthur Eze is one of the very few men from the region who can walk into the presidential villa in Aso Rock, bypass the protocol officers, and sit down for a direct conversation with the commander-in-chief. He is trusted by the establishment in a way that the Southeast governors are not. And right now, President Tinubu has a problem that only a trusted friend can solve. Let's look at the reality from the president's perspective. Keeping Nnamdi Kanu in prison for life sounds like a victory for the state, but in practice, it is a massive liability. As long as Kanu is behind bars, he remains a martyr. His imprisonment fuels the anger that drives the insecurity in the Southeast. It keeps the sit-at-home orders alive, which bleeds the Nigerian economy of billions of naira every single Monday. But the president cannot simply open the prison gates and let him go. That would make the federal government look weak. It would look like they surrendered to intimidation. The president needs an off-ramp. He needs a third party to take responsibility. He needs a soft landing. That is exactly where Arthur Eze and the 10 billion naira come into the picture. Now let's address the figure that is flying around. 10 billion naira. To the average person, this sounds like a ransom. But in high-level politics, you don't pay ransoms. You fund solutions. You have to understand that this money would likely not be a bribe handed to a judge. That is too messy. Instead, this money would act as the seed capital for a political solution. We have seen this playbook before. Think back to 2009 and the Niger Delta Amnesty Program. The government didn't just tell the militants to drop their guns. They created a well-funded structure to absorb them. They paid for training, they paid stipends, and they integrated the commanders into the economy. The rumor suggests that Arthur Eze's 10 billion naira would function as a Southeast Peace and Rehabilitation Trust Fund. The logic is strictly business. The government's main excuse for refusing to release Kanu has always been the violence in the region, the burning of police stations, the attacks on flowing traffic, and the economic sabotage. The argument is that releasing Kanu would embolden these criminals. But what if Arthur Eze's money changes that equation? What if that 10 billion naira is used to settle the agitators on the ground? Imagine a scenario where the funds are used to create legitimate business opportunities for the youths who are currently enforcing the sit-at-home. If you take the foot soldiers off the street with good-paying jobs funded by a private donor, the violence drops. If the streets become quiet, President Tinubu gets exactly what he wants, a valid excuse to release Kanu. He can stand before the cameras and tell the nation, I am not releasing a criminal because of pressure. I am releasing him to support a peace initiative funded by respected Igbo elders. It changes the narrative from government-government partnership. It makes Arthur Eze the hero. It makes Tinubu the benevolent father. And it gets Kanu out of his cell. But, and this is a very big but, there is a heavy price to be paid. In the world of billionaire deal-making, nobody gives you something for nothing. If Prince Arthur Eze is willing to spend 10 billion naira to secure this release, he will demand strict ironclad conditions. This is where the situation gets dangerous for Nnamdi Kanu. We believe the deal comes with a document that Kanu must sign before he steps 1 foot outside that prison. The terms would likely be devastating to his original mission. The first condition would almost certainly be total silence. No more broadcast on Radio Biafra. No more impassioned speeches to crowds. No more social media posts. The government would require him to disappear from the public eye. The second condition could be even harder to swallow. A change of ideology. They might require him to publicly renounce the demand for a separate nation and instead support the concept of one Nigeria, or, at the very least, a restructured Nigeria. Imagine the psychological toll of having to shake hands with the very system you spent 10 years fighting against. And then there is the third, and perhaps most likely, condition: exile. There is a strong precedent for this. When leaders become too big for the state to handle but too dangerous to kill, they are often flown out of the country. We saw it with Ojukwu, who spent years in Ivory Coast. The deal might require Kanu to board a private jet funded by Arthur Eze, fly to a neutral country like the UK or Israel, and agree never to return to Nigeria as long as the current administration is in power. This brings us to the ultimate question: will Nnamdi Kanu agree? We are talking about a man who has shown incredible stubbornness. He rejected bail conditions in the past. He refused to beg. He sees himself not just as a leader, but as a symbol of resistance. If he signs this deal, he gets his freedom. Yes, he gets to see his family. He gets to sleep in a real bed, but he loses his fire. If Kanu accepts money and help from a billionaire, who is a close ally of the government, his hardcore followers might see him as a sellout. They might say he has compromised. They might say he has eaten from the table of the enemy. This could fracture the entire movement. The agitation could collapse, not because of bullets, but because of disillusionment. On the flip side, if he refuses, if he looks at Arthur Eze and says no, then he is choosing to die in prison. And make no mistake, the government will use his refusal against him. They will leak the details of the offer to the press. They will tell the world, look, we tried. His own brother offered billions to settle the peace, but he refused. He loves the trouble more than he loves his own freedom. It would paint him as unreasonable and selfish potentially turning public opinion against him. It is a trap wrapped in gold, a 10 billion naira cage. As I speak to you now, the clock is ticking. Reports are filtering in of movements in the shadows. A private jet landing on the tarmac in Sokoto under the cover of darkness. A delegation of high-ranking traditional rulers and business moguls gathering in Enugu. The money is reportedly ready. The president's approval is reportedly sitting on a desk in Abuja. All they need is the signature of the man in the cell. But the latest whispers suggest a twist in the tale. Rumors say Kanu has looked at the deal and made a counter-demand that shocked the negotiators. He isn't just asking for his own personal freedom. He knows that if he walks out alone, he leaves his followers behind. He is reportedly asking for a general amnesty for all his detained lieutenants and supporters across the country. He is raising the stakes. He is asking Arthur Eze not just to buy one man's freedom, but to buy the freedom of thousands. This changes the math completely. 10 billion naira might be enough for one man, but is it enough for an army? Is Arthur Eze willing to go that far? And is the federal government willing to release thousands of people just to silence one? The next few days will be critical. We are watching a high-stakes poker game where human lives and the stability of a nation are the chips on the table. The court case is over, but the real trial, the trial of will, money, and influence, here's just beginning. What do you think will happen? If you were Nnamdi Kanu, would you take the 10 billion naira deal and go into exile? Or would you stay in prison to keep your ideology alive? And do you trust Arthur Eze's intentions? Or do you think this is a strategy to finally kill the agitation for good? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. This story is developing fast, and we will be here to update you the moment the next card is played. This on